Hello, welcome to TeamSNG deck profile. Today we're going to be looking at Krawlers with a level 9 engine, so it's kind of fun. While I've got your attention, I'd like to ask you guys, leave us a like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help out the channel. And make sure you check out the team's Facebook page. Link to that will be in the description down below. So the way this deck works is basically we use the World Legacy engine to find the Krawler cards that we require, and our goal is to get into our big boss monster, Deus-X Krawler, who can effectively negate everything on your opponent's side of the field. It becomes a one-sided skill drain. So the whole goal is to get into him. We do run some level 9 stuff as well to benefit, and we also use World Legacy Monstrosity to help turbo him and some of the other level 9 stuff out. You know what, I think we talked about it enough. Let's get into it. So we're going to start out talking about the monsters. The first group of monsters we're going to talk about is the basic Krawlers. They're all level 2 insects that are flip monsters. They do all have the same effect, which is if they are sent from the field to the graveyard by an opponent's card effect, you get to special summon 2 from the deck in face-down defense, except for the card that was sent. So, like, for instance, if you were to send Gleal, who we'll see in just a second, you can summon Spine and Ranveer, but you can't summon another Gleal. So, let's get into it. The first one we run is, well, it's Gleal. Gleal's really powerful. He basically lets you special summon from the grave or your hand a Krawler monster, and that can be any level, so it does let us get into our level 9 Deus-X Krawler, who effectively acts as a one-sided skill drain that we've already talked about. The next basic Krawler we run is 3 copies of Krawler Receptor. This is effectively the deck's Rota. Lets you search out any Krawler monster and add it to your hand. So what you're typically going to search is you're going to search whatever you're missing to get yourself to Gleal and Deus-X, because that is one of the fastest ways to get Deus-X Krawler onto the field. Next is the biggest bootied basic Krawler, and that is Krawler Spine. This acts as a man-eater bug. When it's flip summoned, you can destroy something on your opponent's side of the field. Then we run a couple 2-ofs. The first is Krawler Dendrite, who acts as a foolish burial, letting you send a Krawler from the deck to the grave. Actually, it's any monster, but typically you're going to be sending a Krawler from the deck to the grave. And Ranveer. Now this is our recursion. He lets you target 2 Krawler monsters in your grave and add them back to your hand. So he lets you recur your stuff so that you can keep playing on multiple turns. And the last one that we run in the basic Krawlers is Krawler Axon. This is basically your back row removal. When he's flip summoned, you can target Spell or Trap on your opponent's side of the field and destroy it. So that's all the basic Krawlers. Next, we're going to talk about the big boss monster for the Krawlers in Deus-X Krawler. Deus-X Krawler is a level 9 insect. It's a flip monster, and basically what its effect is that when this card is face down, if your opponent was targeted with card effects, you can quick effect flip this card. That allows you to negate the card that was targeting it and destroy it. Also, after this card has been flipped, while it remains face up on the field, none of your opponent's activated card effects actually work. So you can't, it's basically a one-sided skill drain. Now, if your opponent does manage to get rid of it, that's okay, because he lets you add a level 9 monster with a different attribute and type from the deck. Now, we do run some level 9 so we can utilize this effect, so that effect isn't wasted if we do end up losing our Deus-X Krawler. However, typically there's enough ways that we're going to recur this back from the grave, whether it's with Ranveer or it's with Gleal, that even if this was to hit the grave, we're not massively concerned, because we can usually get it back. Now, for our level 9s, we run the King Lithosagium, the Disaster. Seeing as all the Krawlers are Earth types, you can tribute off the Krawlers to make True King Lithosagium, the Disaster, and you can basically take cards out of your opponent's extra deck, so that's why we run this. We run Metaltron 12, the True Dracobaton. This is a really interesting card. Basically, you contribute face-up spell and traps. They have to be continuous spell and traps, so you can't tribute your field. But you can tribute spells, traps, and monsters to summon this. This needs to be tributed with 3 tributes. But when it's on the field, it's unaffected by the effects of cards that share the type of card that was tributed to summon this. So, typically we're not going to use that side of part of the effect, but it can come in handy to let us put a body on board. Typically though, what we're going to use is we're going to do this using him and then use World Legacy Monstrosity to special summon 2 different level 9s from the deck, and then we're going to overlay them to go into our rank 9 engine that we run in the extra deck. Now we do run Nightmare Incarnation Idly for those pesky link boards. Again, it's just a different type. It's a fairy dark, so it's a different type, so it can benefit off of Deus-X Krawler, but it can also benefit off of World Legacy Monstrosity. So that's part of the reason we run it. We run both of these really just to go into our rank 9 engine, not much else. We also run, so that does it for the generic rank level 9s that we run. We also run a couple generators. We only run 2. The first generator we run is one of my favorites, which is Needhog. You can tribute him or a generator monster to negate a summon. The other generator boss that we run is Har, generator boss of storms. What he does is, if your opponent was to add a card from deck to hand at any point in their turn except for the draw phase, he will make it so that your opponent has to send a monster from their field or their hand to the grave to be able to do that search. Then you can couple his second effect. If you have 2 generators on board, you can send 2 of them to the grave to negate the activation of any card effect. So basically, between Needhog and Har, you're typically going to be able to at least negate something on your opponent's turn. That does it for the level 9s altogether that we run. Next, we do run one World Legacy monster, and that is World Legacy World Armor. Now, this is the Krawler specific World Legacy card, so of course we're running it in the Krawler deck. If a monster is flip summoned while this card is in your hand, you can special summon this card from your hand. Boom! That's real nice. He's a big body, 2500 attack, 2500 defense. Not the biggest, but he's big enough. Now, if this card is normal summoned to the field, you can target a monster special summon from the extra deck on your opponent's side of the field, and this card, and you return both to the hand. So this will let you basically take stuff off of your opponent's field. It's a little bit of spot removal the deck has access to. Typically, though, you're not going to be normal summoning this, you're going to be special summoning it by its own effect. And that does it for the monster lineup that we run. So let's talk about the spells. We run quite a large spell lineup in this deck. The first spell we run is the Krawler field spell, World Legacy in Shadow. What this does is it increases all Krawlers' attack by 300 and all Krawlers' defense by 300. What it also lets you do is you can special summon face down, or if in face down defense or face up attack, a Krawler monster from your hand. So this lets us get multiple bodies on board, which can be really important to go into some of the link plays that help facilitate the rest of the deck. If one of your flip monsters is sent from the field to the graveyard by battle with your opponent's monster, you can actually send that monster to the graveyard. So that will allow you to basically remove any threats so long as you have this on the field. Your opponent can't really destroy your Krawlers by battle without risking their own stuff. The other World Legacy card that we run to specifically help the Krawler engine is World Legacy Survivor. Now, World Legacy Survivor is really good. What you do is you execute the top 5 cards of your deck, and you add any World Legacy card or any Krawler from those 5 to your hand. The rest go to the grave. So, if you were to excavate 5 cards and say, see Gleal and Deus-X Krawler, you can let Deus-X Krawler go to the grave, add the Gleal to your hand, and that'll let you set Gleal and bring Deus-X Krawler back during your opponent's turn. So that can be a really good sort of little play and interaction. World Legacy Survivor does help us facilitate that. Next, the heavily alluded to World Legacies Monstrosity. We run 2 of them. What this card lets you do is you can special summon a level 9 monster from your hand. That's the most important thing it does. If you have a level 9 on the field, though, you can activate this and you can special summon 2 level 9s from the deck that have different attributes and types to the one on the field. So, if you manage to get Deus-X Krawler on the field, which isn't super impossible for this deck to be able to do, you can activate this and you can basically flood the field with level 9 monsters that you can then utilize effects of. So something like Generator Har and Generator Needhog. If you were to get both of them on the board, you now have additional negations and things to help slow your opponent down. And that actually does it for the entire World Legacy spell lineup. The next spell that we run is 3 copies of Book of Moon. Target face-up monster on the field, change to face-down defense. It's really good for us. It lets us flip our own crawlers back down so we can use their effects multiple times, but it also lets us interrupt our opponent because a lot of stuff needs to be face-up as link material, synchro material, and Legacies material. So Book of Moon does help us slow down our opponents by taking away their ability to maybe climb into their bigger engines that they might be trying to get into. But at the same time, it does also help us because it lets us flip our crawlers face down so that we have them for later usage. Now, because we run some level 9s and they can be kind of bricky, we do run Kujikiri Curse. This is effectively just a trade-in for level 9s. So you activate this, send a level 9 from hand, draw 2 cards. The nice thing is, because we do have Gleal and Gleal special summons from the grave, we can actually send Deus-X Krawler from our hand to draw as well, and that will let us use Deus-X Krawler later in the game from the graveyard. And that does it for our spell lineup. Let's talk about the traps. The first trap that we run is 2 copies of World Legacies Mind Meld. When an opponent's monster goes to activate its effect, you can activate this, and it will change the opponent's monster to return something on your opponent's side of the field to your hand. So typically what's going to happen is you're going to activate this. It's going to cause your opponent's monster's effect to become bounce something from your field back to your hand. So that can be really useful because it basically lets us negate any searches or anything like that that might be problematic for us. Also, while this card is engraved, you can banish this card and target a link monster on the field and then special summon a Krawler from the grave to the zone the link monster points to in face down defense position. So it does help us set up and like recur from the grave a little better. Now, while that's a nice trap for us, we do run one that's even better. In World Legacies Pawns. World Legacy Pawns basically lets us flip our crawlers on our opponent's turn, so it lets us interact with our crawlers on our opponent's turn. Also, it lets us shuffle crawlers back from the grave into the deck to target a crawler on our field and flip it back face down so that we can use it again. So it acts as a continuous Book of Moon, as well as allowing us to flip monsters on our opponent's turn so we can use them there. That does it for the main lineup. Let's talk about the extra deck. So the first cards we're going to talk about in the extra deck are the Krawler cards. So we run 2 copies of Krawler. It gains effects based on how many crawlers are on the field. If there's 2, all crawlers on the field gain 300 attack and defense. If you control 2, all monsters on your side of the field gain 300 attack and defense. If you control 4, your opponent can't activate card effects during the battle phase. And finally, if you control 6, your monsters can attack your opponent directly. So basically, it is a way for this deck to push for game. If you can have this plus 5 other crawlers, typically you're not winning that way. You're winning through control and stun, and basically just slowly whittling your opponent's life points down. But you never know, this could be a way that you can definitely win. The next crawler we run is X-Krawler Synaphysis. Synaphysis gains 300 attack. Synaphysis grants 300 attack to all the crawlers that it points to, and the crawlers that it points to can make 2 attacks during each battle phase. Finally, we run 1 copy of Krawler Neurogos. Krawler Neurogos grants 300 attack to each crawler it points to. Any battle damage a crawler that it points to inflicts to your opponent is doubled. So, between the 3 of them, they do allow you to push for game. However, typically, we're not actually using the Krawler Link monsters that much. They are more of a late game play. Early on, we're going into something else altogether. And that monster is Subterra Behemoth Fiendus. What this does is it costs 2 flip monsters to make. It gains attack for the Subterra monsters that it points to. That doesn't matter. Because we're not running any other Subterras. It lets you send a flip monster from the deck to the grave, and it also lets you special summon a monster from your hand in face down defense to a zone it points to. So what that'll let you do is effectively you can send something to the grave that you might need later, such as such as Deus-X Krawler, and you can also special summon one from your hand in face down defense, such as Gleal. So if you end up in a situation where you can get to this and you have Gleal in hand, you're set. If you end up in a situation where you can get to this and you have Deus-X Krawler in your hand, you're set. because either way you can special summon that monster face down in defense, and that will allow you to either special summon Deus-X Krawler back from the grave using Gleal's effect, or it'll allow you to special summon Deus-X Krawler using Subterra Behemoth Fiendus' effect. So typically this is the card that you're going into first when you're going into your extra deck at all. Next, because we run so many World Legacy cards, we are playing the World Legacy Blade Master Lib. This is literally just to help us find any World Legacy cards maybe that we're missing, maybe set World Legacy pawns from the deck to the field. This is just why we run this. Now, because you're typically going to want to go into Subterra Behemoth Fiendus and maybe even then Lib, you're going to have two monsters that can then go into Crusadia Avermax. Now this can be just really useful for us because it lets us control the game and it gives us another option to help us push for game and keep our Krawlers on the field so that we can flip them when we're ready and not when our opponent is. That does it for the Link lineup. Let's talk about the Fusion lineup. Haha! Yeah, that's right, we do run one Fusion monster, and that is World Chalice Dragon, Guard Dragon Armaduke. Basically, he requires 3 Link monsters. He can also attack everything on your opponent's side of the field, so that allows us to help us break our opponent's board. He can also help us get rid of some pesky Links, because we can use his battle effect to attack a card, and then banish a Link from our grave to remove a Link monster of the same rating when he's battling that Link monster. So he can help us break an opponent's board and really helps us push through anything our opponent might have established. Typically we're not going into him that much, but he is there as a utility card if we end up in a bit of a sticky wicket. Now, we do run a rank 9 engine, which obviously it makes perfect sense for us to. The first is True King of All Calamities. Don't know how long it's going to be around, but basically your opponent doesn't play Yu-Gi-Oh! Well, hey, nice fun interactive card. Next is something a little more interactive in 9 Lives Cat. What 9 Lives Cat does is it makes it so that our opponent cannot target monsters we control that were special summoned from the graveyard. So we can effectively go into this if we have Deus-X Krawler, and we can, on the field, we can go into this and that will protect our Deus-X Krawler from being targeted by card effects. And our Deus-X Krawler already turns off monster effects, so now we're in a situation where our opponent's going to have to try and get to something big enough to run over a 3000 attack booty. Also, you can detach a material from this card, and then you get to target a level 9 monster in your graveyard, or a monster in your opponent's graveyard, and special summon it to your field. So, what you do is, if you have Deus-X Krawler and another level 9 on the board, you can use both to go into 9 Lives Cat. You can then use 9 Lives Cat to send Deus-X Krawler, and then use Deus-X Krawler, then use target Deus-X Krawler with 9 Lives Cat's effect, and then special summon it back. So, that is an option for you. The only problem with that is your Deus-X Krawler will be face up, and you need to flip it to use its skill drain like effect. So the next level 9 that we run is to help us push for game, and that is Infinitrack Earth Slicer. Basically, when it destroys an opponent's monster by battle, it attaches it to itself as material, and then you can detach materials from this card to target cards on your opponent's side of the field and destroy them, equal to the number of materials detached. So if you build up several materials and then you detach several materials, you're basically wiping out your opponent's board all in one go. The final rank 9 that we run is Jormungandr, the Generator Boss of Eternity. It gains 1000 attack for every material attached to it, and every turn as a quick effect, we can detach a material from it, and then our opponent, then both of us draw a card, both us and our opponent will draw a card, and then attach a card from our hand to it as material. So it helps us potentially limit our opponent's resources, taking things away from them, but at the same time, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger every turn. And that does it for the deck. So this deck's an interesting deck because it does utilize a mechanic that's kind of died off in the flip mechanic. Now, it can recur a lot of stuff back from grave, but typically, as I've said throughout, Your main goal is to recur back your Deus-X Krawler in face-down defense so that you can use its skill drain effect on your opponent's side of the field. This can be done through several different methods, using cards like Gleal to bring it back from the grave, or even from the hand. We can also search it out quite easily using the Krawler support cards, such as World Legacy Survivor, which is why we only need to run 2 copies of him, giving us some extra space in the deck. And the fact that he's a level 9 monster that can special summon other level 9 monsters from the deck when he leaves the field can also be really useful to help us build a board with some big monsters. Now we do get to control the game on our opponent's turn using cards like World Legacy Pawns and Book of Moon. That lets us control our opponent's side of the field so that all of our moves aren't completely dictated by our opponent's plays. It also does allow us to put some of our Krawlers face up, meaning if they're destroyed by card effects, we get their swarming ability to let us build up a bigger and bigger board. Now, one of the ways that we can make sure that we see our Deus-X Krawler is using our Subterra Behemoth Fiendus, letting us send it from the deck to the grave and special summon Gleal from our hand, or maybe send Gleal from the deck to the grave and special summon it from our hand. It doesn't really make a difference of how we get to it, but this is a pretty much surefire way of guaranteeing we will see Deus-X Krawler on our opponent's turn, whether it's we flip Gleal or we flip Deus-X Krawler directly. So this could be really useful. However, if we do end up in a tight pinch and we manage to get some level 9s on the board, we do have another win condition in the deck, using cards like True King of All Calamities, Infinitrack Earth Slicer, and Jormungandr Generator Boss of Eternity. Using these 3 will allow us to basically go straight into big boss monsters that can beat over our opponent's board, hopefully, and maybe get us to a situation where we can just win outright in one go. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. If you have, make sure you leave us a like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help out the channel. And also, head over to the team's Facebook page, leave us a like over there. Link to that will be in the description below. If you want to see more of this deck, check out the test hands video, which is coming out later this week. Link to that will be in the description below as well, as soon as it's up. So make sure you keep an eye on that. And I guess at this point, all I can really say is, I'll see you guys at the next video.